Welcome, audience. Welcome to Profile. This is Arif Malik. I'm your host today. Profile, as you understand, we bring few of the achievers, few of those who, in fact, tread a different track. Those people, in fact, who make an impression, who leave their footprints and fingerprints on things happening around us. Today, we have two amazing guests with us. And today's topic is Rendezvous with Pakistan. Pakistan is one of the most misperceived country around the world. Whenever they make different indexes, they usually put Pakistan in the top 10, and most of that is for the wrong reasons. However, interesting bit is that there are people who, in fact, endeavor to discover Pakistan beyond the headlines, beyond what is a breaking news. So these two people, they are established, they are success stories in their own right in their respective fields. I'll be introducing you to Vanessa O'Brien and Cynthia Ritchie. Welcome to the Profile.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Pakistan.
Thank you.
Like Vanessa is like we have. She has kind of laurels. She is, and we all are proud of her. She is holding a Guinness Book of World Record in being the fastest woman who surmounted the 7 tallest mountains on the planet. Now, when it happened, it has a story behind itself, and this is something we're going to discover today. So, Vanessa, first of all, congratulations being in the Guinness Book of World Record.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful honor. So I think your whole entire family and friends must be celebrating, and that's for a great reason. Like, you are the fastest woman, and that is about the 7 tallest mountains. At the same time, you made this decision to be a mountaineer when, like, what I understand, you have been a successful banker for 1 or 2 decades, and then when you were there on your desk, probably selling mortgages or investment or whatever, and then we had the credit crunch, the subprime crisis in the U.S. And that is the time when you made the decision to surmount the mountain. So it's such a fascinating idea from like looking at the mountain when things are going down the hill. So would you please share the story with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I was saying at the Women's Achievement Conference yesterday, people say, oh, that's great. There's a Guinness World Record for the fastest woman to climb the highest peak on every continent. That's amazing. But I always think, that's not really the wow. The wow is having done those things, when you leave something like banking, after something like a financial crisis, having no climbing experience whatsoever, almost on the back of a challenge. And a challenge.
What, are you trying to kill yourself without getting caught?
No, but it's around finding a new sense of purpose, and something along the lines of what would you do if you weren't afraid.
Oh yes. And
for me, the financial crisis clearly was a sign that banking was a time to step aside, and since that was what I knew, stepping aside for me was a time to step aside and look for something else to do. And when I was putting together some parameters, I thought, okay, it should be something goal-oriented, something that would take 2 to 3 years, because that's how long I thought the recession would last. Something goal-oriented, something challenging, because that's in my personality and DNA, RNA. And as I was thinking through different options, somebody said, what about Everest? And we laughed, because that's what you would do when somebody comes up with a ridiculous option like that. But I couldn't get it out of my head, because the only thing I didn't know how to do was climb. And climbing Everest was happening now. Sure, it had happened then. It had happened in 1953 when Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay had hit the summit, but it was also happening in our lifetime now. And so I thought, the only thing I don't know how to do is climb. I don't know if I'll like it. I don't know if I'll be any good at it, but it's something I can go learn. So that
Fascinating, yeah.
is, and it ticked all those boxes. It would take me 2 to 3 years to learn how to do. It was goal-oriented. It was challenging. I could measure success. Success was, of course, not the summit, but coming down from the summit, as all mountaineers learn shortly after entering mountaineering. So that's what I did. I went.
Just coming back down alive, in fact.
Yes, absolutely. It's a round trip. It's never one way.
Yeah, true.
So that's what I did, and went and learned.
Great. So the 7 tallest peaks are?
Yep. So they represent the tallest peak on each continent. So if you can name the 7 continents, you've got the highest peak on each continent.
Great.
And if you want, I can do that.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Okay. Yeah. So recently, Mount McKinley was renamed Denali, so that's North America.
Right.
You have Antarctica in Antarctica, you have something called, let's see, the Vincent Massif.
Okay.
In Africa, you have Kilimanjaro, which is Tanzania. You have in Everest for Asia. In Europe, you have something called Elbrus, so it's not what most people think of Mont Blanc, because you're measuring the Caucasus Mountains rather than the Volga River as a border.
Okay.
And heading toward Asia, there's the Bass-Mesner list. So if you're following the Bass list, you would take Australia as a continent. If it's the Mesner list, you would take, the Bass list is Kosciuszko for Australia.
Right.
The Mesner list, because, not to get too complicated, but Australia doesn't have much of a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So a mountaineer took up exception with something that was only 2,000 meters high.
Okay.
And he said, no, we got to look at Oceania as a definition. And he said, no, let's go to Papua New Guinea. And he chose Carson's Pyramid. And I think I must have named 7 there.
Yeah, almost you did it. Great. Now, this is something which makes it more interesting, the 7 continents and the tallest peaks.
Yeah.
And that's how you earn your Guinness Book of World Record.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing.
In the shortest period of time.
In the shortest period, exactly.
So that's doing that was 295 days.
395. 295. Wow, so less than a year's time. Great.
Yep. And then if you add the North and South Pole, I did that in 11 months.
Wow.
So that's a different record called the Explorers Grand Slam.
Well, so hopefully we're going to have another one in the Guinness Book, or?
Well, that would be, so for me, K2 is not about fastest, it's about first. So there's never been a British woman to climb to the top and come down alive. There's been 2 British women to climb to the top, Julie Tulloth and Hellison Hargreaves, and both died on descent. And as a dual national with an American passport, there's never been an American to get to the top.
Wow.
So
we keep our fingers crossed, you becoming the first British woman in the next year, in the next couple of months'
that's
time.
2016.
2016, wow, fascinating. Right, so Cynthia, right, let's get you in the conversation. You've been to Pakistan in 2010. That was the first year, probably. And Cynthia was, in fact, chosen by the city of Houston in Texas to be the goodwill ambassador to Pakistan. So that's how you got in touch with Pakistan, first of all, right? So did you visit Pakistan in 2010, and how was the first feeling? We're going to discuss your documentary and other brilliant things you have been doing later, but 2010, your first year of getting in touch with Pakistan. So how was it?
It was completely fascinating to me. I had never had any really aspirations of ever traveling to Pakistan until I came into contact with the Pakistani American community in Houston, Texas. And they actually voted Mayor Anise Parker. They were instrumental, her primary constituency, in fact, in voting her into office. And so that's how I came into contact on a grander scale with the Pakistani Americans. And it was through the Pakistan Chamber of Commerce that they facilitated my first travels to Pakistan.
So how were you chosen? In fact, the goodwill ambassador, like out of nowhere, or there are some...
Well, the mayor's office had
Okay.
a newly established Department of International Affairs,
Okay,
and
right.
I was very good friends with the head, and they loved my interaction with the international community within Pakistan, within the city of Houston.
Okay.
And I had worked closely with the mayor's office on a number of initiatives and establishing the Office of International Communities and so forth. So it was sort of a natural transition, and depending on who you ask, I might say, okay, Cynthia was the craziest to accept the invitation.
Because 2010 was 2010, 2011. These are kind of chaotic years in terms of U.S.-Pakistan relationship, and a lot of bad press happening those days.
There was, I visited actually right before the roller coaster ride of U.S.-Pakistan
okay, right.
relations. So I was there for the flood relief efforts of 2010.
2010, right.
And so I had made a couple of trips during that year, and I just encountered, it was just such a gamut of emotions that I experienced, both heartbreaking and enlightening and very hopeful, and just such a remarkably beautiful country with amazing people throughout. And so after making a couple of humanitarian aid trips, then I had an opportunity to come back to work in Pakistan, and I thought, how often does this happen? As a child, I wanted to be an Egyptian archaeologist, so I wanted to live and learn and explore in a foreign country, and I thought, here's my opportunity to actually live, and I'm being invited to do so. So I've got to take advantage of this.
Well, it was a kind of a law of attraction, when they say.
Yes.
Sometimes the universe conspires.
I had no idea what to expect when I went into Pakistan. I decided to go in as a tabula rasa.
Okay.
I don't pay attention to much of the media, and I don't really watch much TV anyway. All I know is
That's
how
great.
I was treated by the community. So.
Well, this so somehow it struck the chord, and a friend of mine says Jack Canfield is a celebrated author, and a friend as well. He says there's internet, there is internet as well. Mm-hmm. Whenever you think something crazy, something really fascinating, it strikes a chord somewhere, and someone responds to that, and then things happen. Mm-hmm. So somehow you were in Pakistan. Now, being in the country yourself, and now you have approximately 5 years long relationship with the country. You have been visiting, you have been to almost all the places where even Pakistanis might not have gone, almost all 4 provinces and some of the fascinating places. So this is what, yesterday, in fact, a global, there was a Congress, which is Women Achievers Congress. This was an international Women Achievers Congress, which was organized by World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis in London, the first one ever. Cynthia and Vanessa both were invited to the Congress, in fact, to share their fascinating stories. And Cynthia, for the first time, it was kind of a preview or kind of premiere from that angle, shared something amazing, which the audience absolutely loved it. That was your documentary.
I traveled the country, visiting each province, learning from the cultures and building invaluable people-to-people relations. The further I traveled, the more I was amazed, yet comforted by the many things we shared in common. The welcoming nature of the people is the reason Pakistan has become a second home for me.
The title of your documentary is kind of intriguing. So how did you pick it up?
Emerging Face of Pakistan.
Yes, indeed.
This was a combination of thoughts and efforts. Our director, Server Mushtaq, was extraordinarily instrumental when we wrote the treatment for this. And I think between his experience and my experience as a foreigner journeying through Pakistan, those words just naturally assembled themselves, to be quite frank. And I think there's a message within a message there.
Oh yes, there is.
There's a lot of things that are emerging within Pakistan, and but also things that I think were already there. It's just a function of who's asking and who's telling, who's conveying the message. So. we hope to show the people as they naturally are.
In this series, we intend to show Pakistan as a vibrant kaleidoscope of society, against a backdrop of a region rich with history, including music and the arts. A prime destination for adventurers and anyone longing for majestic scenery. Exploring the faiths. Spending time with families. And enjoying the unique culinary offerings.
As I could see, most of the audience were quite enthralled by the impact. They really absolutely loved the preview. And what was quite observable, that it was kind of spontaneous, seemed not much of script, and something which is very natural. So how did you pull it off?
We just were. You know, I think that therein lies the beauty of the art form, that we didn't really have to do much. It was a multiple levels of efforts of people around the country, internationally, that believed in what we wanted to do. So to use the often overused word of synergy, but that simply was what it was. And so when I communicated with people from the concerned authorities to the locals that I knew, I said, this is what I want to do as an individual. These are individuals that knew me for years, had known me since 2010, and not one person was shy about it. Not one person questioned or doubted. They said, yes, we want to be a part of this. And I said, okay, but we're not acting. I want you to be how you are.
Yes. Oh, yes, indeed.
So I had to, I did have to prepare them a little bit to let them know, we're showing your face.
Catching them in the moment.
Exactly. So I just want you to be natural, just be yourselves. And so that was easy.
Good. In Pakistan, most of the life happens without much of script.
That's true.
And you're able to just snap it. And that's what makes it fascinating from that angle. Now, I'm going to ask one intriguing question to both of you. Somehow you have 5 years long experience dealing with Pakistan, and you have your short stint, but what are those 3 to 5 habits of Pakistanis which you believe you got inspired, or you fall in love with, or something that you truly appreciate? There could be lots of annoying habits. That's something.
Well, that's true with every culture and every community, right?
So let's only know those which
focus on the positive.
Oh, yes, which an alien would pick up coming to the country for the first time. So, what did you?
Why don't we collaborate on this?
Sure.
True.
Okay, so definitely hospitality.
Certainly.
I mean, I would say, unlike any culture, and both she and I have traveled extensively around the world, there's no doubt when you enter Pakistan, and even this extends almost the further you go from a major city, the more hospitable, the people become. Mm-hmm. Cynthia has some great stories going outside the big cities, but Islamabad and Skardu, if people had very little, they were more and more welcoming to give you, the cup of tea, and open their homes and welcome you.
Fascinating. Coming from a Guinness Book of World Record holder, could we say Pakistan is the most hospitable country in the world?
I mean, just really, newfound friends.
It's in that top 10 list.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's still wonderful.
Unbelievable. And I had things happen to me, that if I had built a risk assessment list, I wouldn't have put having a tooth fall out, things like that happened to me, on day one, and having to find a dentist and all of that. So, the people that during Ramadan, right, when, their shops aren't open, workplaces aren't open, and people opened their doors and took care of me and made sure I was fit for purpose to go on my way, and looked after me on the Karakoram Highway and places, that, maybe weren't the safest to travel. And, I just found people were, very protective, just really opened their doors and really looked after me.
Excellent. Cynthia?
I echo Vanessa's sentiments, absolutely. One of the stories that I'd sort of like to share is that my mother, who is a true Southern belle from Louisiana and has never been anywhere outside of the United States, of course, was a little bit worried when I first visited Pakistan. And then when we had a Skype call after me being there for my first couple of weeks, she got to see my torso, my upper body, and she said, "Oh, Cynthia, well, it looks like you've put on some weight." And I said, "Well, probably, Mother. Everywhere I go, the Pakistanis feed me." And she goes, "Oh, thank God. If they're feeding you, they're taking care of you." You know,
right,
and I
okay.
thought, what in the world? You know, I'm the world traveler here. And it was just such a revelation for me. My mother, who's a nurse, has a very simple life, goes to work, has her friends and family, very close-knit, but stays close to home. My mother, who's never traveled anywhere, saw something amazing, and through that culinary connectivity, I like to say, she put that together, and I thought, how fascinating is this? You know, my mother all of a sudden was no longer worried that I was in Pakistan because she said, if they're feeding you, they're taking care of you.
Yeah.
You know, and that was very similar to if you were to visit my mother's home, you're going to have tea and you're going to be fed whether you like it or not. You know, so I saw at that point, I really got to see so much more in common. The further I traveled, the more I thought, this is really just like being at home.
Indeed.
You know, with the food and the hospitality, being a Southern woman from the United States. But also, too, I think I have to say, it is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And I, as a Westerner, as a Christian, as a woman, I was raised to be respectful and mindful of all faiths. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about Islam as I was journeying through Pakistan. And so I visited, spoke with a number of imams, and we went to a number of mosques and so forth. And what I came to learn was that within the tenets of Islam, that it was their duty to look after the guests and those who were invited, to protect them and to care for them. And within that knowledge, I became even more comfortable that these were basically extensions of my family. These are my brothers and my sisters, and that we had so much more in common than differences.
Excellent. So the more we are different, the more we're same from that angle. So finding similarities. So Vanessa, what else?
You know, it's a little harder to describe, but the Pakistanis have a very funny sense of humor that I find adorable. And here you have to get to know them better.
Indeed.
And a sense of playfulness and fun as well. And, you know, I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it with the Pakistani, you know, high-altitude porters, you know, where we have down days and we'll just be sitting on the glacier waiting for something, trying to acclimatize. And there's nothing to do. Nothing to do. Everything's packed. There's nothing going on. And, you know, they'll line up some rocks and take a rock and try to knock down rocks, you know, and then everybody will take their turn and, you know, we'll create little games to play. And, you know, it's just kind of that sense of, you know, who can do it and who can take the rock and who can knock it down. You know, yesterday at the conference, you know, at the women's conference, there was the barrister who was saying, well, you know, have things changed for women? And she said, well, it doesn't really matter. As a barrister, I still have to put on a wig and, you know, a cloak or something. And that just made me laugh. You know, it didn't really matter because her profession still required her to put on some stuff. And then I just think, you know, back to, you know, a great old BuzzFeed clip that, you know, showed Homeland as a DVD series, and one of the Pakistani comedians taking that apart and saying, you know, I'm sorry, you know, we are Indo-Aryan, we are not Arabs, and did you really have to hire Arab actors, you know, and you know, don't you have professors like, you know, at Princeton and Yale that can like tell you this stuff, that help consult with Hollywood? Like, you know, he was just outraged, and you know, and that's not what happens to bulletproof glass when it shatters. Let me show you what happens, and you know.
So Vanessa, you couldn't go to Lahore, but Lahore is considered the cultural capital of the country. At the same time, Lahoris are famous for their sense of humor. you might be surprised that in the last 10 years, when Pakistan is going through one of the most turbulent period due to the extremism and radicalism, there are scores of jokes on suicide bombers.
Oh, wow.
Right. So this also shows kind of resilience. In fact, a nation which could laugh at itself. In fact, there are great jokes on politicians. And at the same great jokes on Maulvis, the vicars, in fact, which is something you don't expect looking at the kind of cultural, religious aspect. Then it is, even as you mentioned, suicide bombers, like those people, which is a heinous act itself. But this is the resilience, in fact, which probably got the nation going through all these last 10, 15 years. So, Cynthia, what do you feel about it?
It's funny that you say Maulvis, because when I was in Peshawar, we were visiting with a few Maulvis, and of course, there were a number of bearded gentlemen with us, and I just interacted with them like I'm interacting with you, and one of them out of the blue, in the middle of Peshawar, in a long shalwar kameez, down to his ankles, said, "Cynthia, we want peace, but not in pieces."
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh, that's profound. Should I laugh? And then he started laughing. So when you say that sense of humor, I think that was really quite amazing, because it was such a sensitive time. And me being an American over there, while that's taking place, I thought, well, this is really serious stuff, and how do we mitigate this in a respectful, mindful way? But at the same time, I'm over there as a private citizen, and being able to interact with the locals there was really quite cathartic, I think, for both of us, because they got to interact with a U.S. citizen in ways that they typically don't. And they got to see me from a different perspective, and likewise, myself with them, so.
Excellent. So what else? In terms of something which is really inspirational, something that culturally specific to Pakistan, which you noticed, one more to share.
I can give the example of when I was touring an IDP camp. When I had a lot of security. The federal and provincial security was with me for this tour, and with the internally displaced persons, I encountered this elderly woman who had lost her entire family in the floods. And this was a few years ago. This was just one of many stories. But because this was one of my first, this has always really stuck with me. And she had nothing but a blue UNHCR tarp for her tent or her home, and about 8 to 10 bricks for a makeshift brick oven, and a pile of belongings in the corner. And this woman had nothing. And she fought her way through security to meet with me. And when I saw these people's faces, I politely and as respectfully as I could told my security, I don't need you to keep this bubble around me. These people are not going to harm me. Look what they're dealing with. So I had to ask my security just sort of dissipate. And this one elderly woman made herself to me, and I remember she just put her hands on my face and kissed my forehead, and then wanted me to sit with her and have tea, and she shared with me some of the biscuits that were passed out as provisions. And I thought she had nothing, but what little she had, she wanted to share with me. And so for me, that just resonated internally in ways that I don't have the words to describe the beauty of her actions. But that was across settings. That wasn't isolated to an IDP camp. But despite the challenges that she's gone through and the massive loss that she's gone through, she was still hospitable, and she still saw someone that she wanted to connect with. And we didn't communicate. I didn't speak her language. She didn't speak English. But what I do find fascinating is that the language of compassion is universal.
And Vanessa, you are traveling to Pakistan in 2016.
Yes.
And that's mission K2.
Yes.
So, would you share something about the upcoming times? How do you plan to conquer the killer mountain?
That's right. Sure. So next year I will be leading my own expedition, but not without local help. So my local partner will be Nazir Sabir, who's
he's famous mountaineer.
Very famous mountaineer. So he will provide on-the-ground logistics. He has climbed, many of those 8,000 meter peaks, really all but Nangma Parbat. So he knows the region, he knows the mountains, he's from Hunza himself. So he has many, many years of experience, and I can't think of a better local partner to do so. So we'll have, high altitude porters with us, low altitude porters if there's such a differentiation. And we'll follow pretty much the same path that we did on the reconnaissance trip this year. We'll climb the Abruzzi route as well, which we did the reconnaissance on this year. It's a well trodden path, the original route, if you will, first climbed by the Duke of Abruzzi in 1909. We'll have one or two Sherpa with us as well, and we'll keep the team quite small. So really, myself plus probably no more than 3 Westerners.
Right. Okay.
And the reason for that is really because the smaller teams can take advantage of the weather windows that present themselves. When you have larger teams, it's hard to get a 5-day weather window to get 12 people up and down in a short period of time. When you're a smaller group, you can travel quite light and fast, and a 2-3 day weather window is easier to, if you will, thread a needle and have a successful summit bid than trying to get 12 people up and down. So we're going to move light and fast.
Great stuff. So amen to that. We keep our fingers
right.
crossed for you, so that you become the first British woman to conquer Godwin Aston.
Thank you.
That'll be fascinating. And Cynthia, you have plans to continue with that series, and it's so much fascinating because whatever 5 minutes sneak peek, that was amazing, and we can't wait for more. So how do you plan to continue with your recording and the rest of the series?
Well, I have a few media projects that are planned in Pakistan. With the emerging face of Pakistan, I absolutely am inspired by Vanessa's story as well, and we want to include her. I think that the emerging face of Pakistan is one that is inclusive, one that encourages and welcomes internationals, and of course I think investments is one of the big areas that will be helpful to Pakistan, but investments follow tourism. And Vanessa is just one of the most remarkable people that I've met, and her story is incredible, and it really speaks to the people of Pakistan. She stands out obviously as a Westerner, blonde hair and light eyes and adventurous and so forth, but she also conducts herself well as a British American. She is one of the best ambassadors, I think, of the countries while she's in Pakistan, and so that in and of itself speaks to the multilateral relations at the micro level, which can transcend to the macro level. So we want to include stories like Vanessa and a handful of other Pakistanis around the world, the diaspora in the UK, America, and abroad, to help tell the story of their country.
Excellent. A cheeky question. Both of you might have heard of or watched the Homeland series. Right, which somehow portrays Pakistan in a very interesting light. So, how do you feel about the real country, the real people, the real culture, and something which is a figment of imagination? So, how do you both look at the homeland and the true country itself?
So I've never actually seen the series, although I did download it, and I there's a lot of downtime on a mountain when you're acclimatizing, and there was the BuzzFeed thing, which I think was absolutely hilarious when they took it apart with the Pakistan comedian. But like any of them, one of my Everest climbers was a Saudi, and we would have some fun because he would leave and say he's got to watch West Wing because the Saudis were going to blow up the White House or something. So, there's oftentimes been jokes, where, the Middle East knew that they were in trouble, or on some, Western media program. And so if you were educated about those areas and you knew better, you could have a joke about it. But ultimately, it's not a joking matter, because if you're not educated, it can play badly in the Western media. Because like we were talking about yesterday at the conference with the Congress, the Western media does portray countries like Pakistan in a poor light. And if that's the only information that Westerners get about that country, and it's not just the press now, it can be entertainment in Hollywood,
indeed,
like a series like Homeland, then suddenly you think, oh my God, these are the bad guys.
Yeah, Eureka, I found something fascinating.
So then it's like, we don't know anything about that country except these are the bad guys. We don't know anything about that country except Osama bin Laden was killed there. We don't know anything about that country except terrorism. And then they don't know anything except it ends in a stan. And Pakistan and Afghanistan, and then Americans don't hear the first part; they just hear the last part, and all of a sudden everything's grouped together, and they're all evil, right? It's an axis of evil, and it's in the Middle East, and then there's just negligence and ignorance, and nobody takes another step to learn anything more. And I think it's important as ambassadors who've visited a country to try to differentiate. That's why I make the point of saying Indo-Aryan, not Arab. And to say, no, they speak Urdu, they don't speak Arabic. And, to really try to differentiate, and pull Pakistan out of what people think of when they think of the Middle East in however many different ways and shapes I can, so that Americans who are lazy sometimes in thoughts, and my British compatriots can start to differentiate where I am in the world and who I'm with.
Excellent. That's something, quite an endeavor. I think it's a hard work to do, in fact, but it's appreciated because just most of us are lazy and would like to take things as they look like, as they are in the media or on the headline or in the breaking news or something are in James Bond's latest movie or whatever. So that or in Rambo, whatever. So how do you feel about it, Cynthia? What's your...
Well, no one, to build upon what we're talking about, lethargy, nobody wants to take the cognitive path, that's less traveled. It's easier to just sort of see something and, someone's formulated an opinion for us, to absorb that as opposed to actually think critically for ourselves. And in terms of Homeland, it's intriguing, it's entertainment value, but if you rely upon a Homeland for that being a reality series or a series based on so-called reality, then I bet you're watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians for foreign policy.
No, that's more realistic then.
And there you have it.
Indeed. So we are reaching the last question. Yesterday you attended Women Achievers Congress, which was hosted by WCOP, which is World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis. Somehow you have been interacting with the diaspora, the American Pakistani diaspora in Houston and other places, and then you have been interacting both in the US and in the UK. So yesterday you heard some amazing stories of resolve, commitment, achievement. There were women of substance from the diaspora who made it against the odds. So when you look at the Pakistani diaspora in the UK or in the United States, what are your quick comments about their achievements and how you in fact rank them in terms of their strengths?
Sure. I thought yesterday's event was absolutely amazing, and when you said earlier that it was the first, I was quite surprised because it was so well orchestrated that I would have thought could have been the 10th event. So remarkable. I would say to know that there are 10 Pakistan MPs in the UK, and 5 of those are women.
Women, indeed.
Wow. Hats off. I'm so impressed by that. 10 is a low number, don't get me wrong, but to hear that at least half of those Pakistanis are women, I'm delighted by that number. and the panelists who were there speaking, really of all different professions. So you had doctors, you had lawyers, barristers, solicitors, you know,
Sports media.
Sports,
yeah.
media, you know, Condé Nast. I mean, they were every single profession was represented, and I found all of that extremely, you know, uplifting to know that there they were, and they were high-ranking positions. These were not,
Indeed.
you know, admins or, you know, PAs or something like that. These were
Or the chief executives.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. So for me, I knew that everything that was being discussed, you know, that these were real issues, and that the fact that they were being voiced and put on the table, reiterated at the end, you know, and being captured, written up, discussed in the media. All the media was present. In fact, it was broadcast live. That was meaningful, and the fact that the High Commissioner stayed and wrapped it up at the end, spent the 4 hours for the entire thing, pretty much summed it up right then and there, that was an important event for him. So I was
Excellent,
delighted.
yeah. That was a big gesture, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cynthia.
I love interacting with the diaspora all over the world, and from Washington and Houston, Dallas. Houston is where it all began for me, so I have to always pay respect and remembrance for the Pakistani Americans who educated and enlightened me in terms of their country. Also Los Angeles, a number of the pockets around the United States. There's a huge, incredible opportunity for the diaspora to join hands and say, this is who we are as a community in a unifying manner. I think one of the things that I've noticed in terms of my communications with them is that they are looking for something to believe in, and we want to help be a part of that. I think that as a global community, it's incumbent upon us as private citizens. We don't have to worry about bureaucracy and red tape so much. We go forth and we conquer, and I find this is a fascinating net that I think Vanessa and I have sort of by happenstance have woven together. I've crossed the breadth of the country and she's traversed vertically, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it amazing, but it speaks to the content of everyone's character with our heritages and our history and what has made us so good as we are as Americans and British Americans, and the fact that we can continue forward in a country that is so different and foreign from what we have originally known, but we have chosen to embrace the unknown as part of as global citizens. That's who we are first and foremost. And the community has likewise ridden with us on the roller coaster, but we're all strapped in, and we're in this for the long haul. So.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's fascinating to finish that. I could recollect Sir Edmund Hillary's saying, who said that we don't conquer mountains, we conquer ourselves. So in fact, when we look at the mountains, each one of us has our own particular mountain to conquer and climb. So what we learned from Vanessa and Cynthia, that is, if you follow your passion, then and something that you in fact love doing, then amazing things happen, and then the universe conspires to make it happen. So thank you very much, Vanessa and Cynthia.
Sure.
We wish you all the best for your next year's K2 endeavor. At the same time, Cynthia, the whole world can't wait. We don't want the homeland to be on the screen, but your documentary.
Yes.
So let's have it soon.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.